Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. It's a great day to be with you all as we continue to study the parables of the kingdom in Matthew's gospel. And today we are going to see Jesus's explanation of the meaning of the wheat and darnel, or wheat and tares, as we often think of it, that we looked at the other day. But first, Matthew records for us these words in 13:34 and 35. All these things Jesus spoke in allegories or parables to the multitudes, and without an allegory or parable, he was not speaking to them, that might be fulfilled that was spoken through the prophet, saying, quote, I will open in allegories my mouth. I will utter things having been hidden from the foundation of the world. So that is a quote from the Psalms, and Matthew here is explaining to us that the reason, at least one of the reasons, Jesus is speaking in parables is because a prophet in the Psalms, in this case Asaph, said that he would. Now, if you've been with me long enough, you know that I'm trying to create in you this intense desire that when you see the New Testament quote the Old Testament, that you go back and look at the broad passage, not just a verse or two, but the whole vision, if it's a prophecy, or the whole, in this case, psalm, and understand why the New Testament is telling us this fulfills that. The New Testament authors do not do like we do. Your pastors and favorite theologians so often will grab a verse and rip it out of its context and simply build a system, a conclusion around it. And the scripture doesn't do that. So, this is from Psalm 78, or in the Septuagint, Psalm 77. And it says, Pay attention, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter problems from of old. That's the portion that is quoted by Matthew. And there's some difference in some of the wording here, but it's, largely the same. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter problems from of old, things that we heard and we knew them, and our fathers told us. They were not hidden from their children to a next generation, as they kept telling of the praises of the Lord. And he goes on and lays out what God did in the past, but this is the part that I think is germane here. So he's going to go on and warn them or explain to them why God revealed these things so that they would set their hope in God and not forget the works of God and seek out his commandments, that they should not be like their fathers, a generation crooked and embittering, a generation which did not set its heart aright and its spirit was not faithful to God. So in the context of Asaph's psalm here, he's saying God spoke in these parables to warn them and reveal them what the truth was so that they would not be like the ancients and commit rebellion. Well, Jesus here is speaking to a generation and he's warning them they are going to be like their fathers and commit rebellion against God and suffer the consequences. So, I'm not going to spend any more time there, but if you go back and read the psalm all the way through, you'll see that kind of theme. Sana says, read it this morning, unicorns for the win. Yeah, my son loves unicorns. He's happy to find some translations have unicorns as well. All right, so let's get on with this next section because I'm going to try to keep this to a reasonable time, but there's so much here. All right, then having led away the multitudes, Jesus came into the house, and his disciples came near to him, saying, Explain to us the allegory of the darnel of the field. And I remind you, the word that's translated here, darnel or darnel, I'm not sure the right way to pronounce that. This is the word that's usually translated tares. It is a poisonous weed, and it at the beginning of the harvest, or the beginning of the growth, it looks like a wheat, um, not flower. A wheat plant? But then later it takes on a different form and is obviously not wheat, and it's poisonous. And sometimes enemies would do this. They would sow in this darnel in a in a farmer's field, hoping to destroy their crop and that kind of thing. So Jesus had told the parable. Let's go back and check. All right, here it is. Here's what Jesus had said a little bit earlier in Matthew 13. He said, "The kingdom of the heavens was likened to a man sowing good seed in his field. And while men are sleeping, his enemy came and sowed darnel in the midst of the wheat and went away. And when the herb sprang up and yielded fruit, then appeared also the darnel. And the servants of the householder, having come near, said to him, 'Lord, did you not sow good seed in your field? From where then does it have the darnel?'" Right? No farmer is going to put this this poisonous weed in his field. So where'd it come from? He says to them, "A man, an enemy, did this." And the servant said to him, "Will you, then having gone away, we may gather it up?" He said, "No, lest, gathering up the darnel, you root it up with the wheat. Permit both to grow together until the harvest. And in the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, gather up first the darnel and bind it in bundles to burn it, and the wheat gather up into my storehouse." So Jesus tells that parable, and then after these other things and everyone's gone away, the disciples come to him privately and say, "Hey, Lord, what's that all about? What's that whole wheat and tares kind of thing all about?" So here's his answer. He who is sowing the good seed is the Son of Man. And the field is the world. And the good seed, these are the sons of the kingdom. All right, let me just pause there for a moment. This is one of the reasons I continually urge you and exhort you not to take a term, or in this case a phrase, and assign a definition to it and assume it always means that. The sons of the kingdom, that's the good seed. Do you see that? The good seed. These are the sons of the kingdom. Well, what does that mean? These are the heirs of the kingdom. These are the ones who are faithful to the Son of Man, who are going to receive the kingdom, Daniel 7. Everybody tracking with that? Now, if you take that definition, that is clear in this context that the sons of the kingdom are the good guys, so to speak. If you take that and assign that meaning to the term sons of the kingdom, then you're going to find yourself in trouble. Where to go? That phrase only occurs one other place. It's back in Matthew chapter 8, and we looked at this and knows how it's used here. "But the sons of the kingdom will be cast forth into outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." That's where the centurion professed faith in Jesus, in the sense that, just give the word and my son will be healed. And Jesus says he hasn't found such great faith even in Israel, and that many will come from the east and the west and recline with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of the heavens. But the sons of the kingdom will be cast into the outer darkness. In that setting, the sons of the kingdom is describing the Jews who should have been heirs of the kingdom, but they lack the faith that this Gentile centurion had. Therefore, they're going to be cast out. Do you see the difference? You can't just assign a meaning to any term or phrase and assume it's always consistent. Here in 13, in this parable, the seed of the Son of Man, the sons of the kingdom these are the righteous. In chapter 8, they are unrighteous. So just trying to make my point again and again, we are so easily drawn to systematizing and creating definitions that that now cloud our interpretation of the context. All right, so let's move on then. So the one sowing the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed, these are the sons of the kingdom. The darnel are the sons of the evil one. So the Son of Man is planting seed. He has sons. And the evil one is also planting seeds. He has son. The enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest, and here's the key for interpretation, is, and the LSV renders it, full end of the age. This is the Greek word suntelos. Now, that's the root. The actual form that occurs here is a little different, but because I've talked about telos in the past, I want to just, so telos, remember, means the goal. It means end, but not simply the stopping point. It's end as in the goal toward which things were heading. And then sun is a prefix added to it to sort of intensify it. More importantly, this word is right out of Daniel that we're going to look at that'll show you the context. I'm just going to tell you right now, the end of the age here is not something in our future. And I'll show you that in Daniel. If you've been with me for a while, you've seen this again and again. All of this is taking place in the first century. It's the end of the pre-kingdom age, the end of the old covenant era, kind of both of those coming together. Okay, so that's the time frame. And the reapers are the messengers, the angels. As then the darnel is gathered up and is burned with fire, so it will be at the suntelos, at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send forth his messengers, his angels, and they will gather up out of his kingdom all the stumbling blocks and those doing lawlessness, and he will cast them into the furnace of the fire. There will be weeping and gnashing of the teeth. Then will the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who is having ears to hear, let him hear. So the righteous shining forth as the sun is also from Daniel, and that's going to help give us the context from which Jesus grabs this language. All right, so we need to go back and remind ourselves of the language here in Daniel 12. Now, if you were with us in the Revelation study, we looked at this frequently because these concepts recur through Revelation continually. All right, I see some chatter here. Let me see if there's anything I need to address before we go on. Misconception says, are you saying you're drawing an analogy, the wheat and the tares, also similar to Matthew 24, 2 in the field? Nope, those have, well, I'm not drawing an analogy. Jesus is making an analogy. And your statement that anybody can be a tare, that is not true. This context is not talking about just anybody. So stay with us. Don't argue with me. Just stay with and let me try to make my case. And then if you disagree, fine. But you're bringing an assumption to the text that I don't think is fair. Context based on the words used by the author. Do we know? Is that what you're trying to say? Do we know the meanings of the words? Yeah. All right. Well, just hold your horses and let me make my case, and then you can disagree if you want. All right, Daniel 12. And at that hour, Michael, the great angel who stands over the sons of your people. I love that for obvious reasons. Okay, so Michael stands over the Jewish people. See that? Daniel's a Jew. Michael is the angel that stands over his people. And he will pass by. That is a day of affliction, or it could be translated a day of tribulation. We've been over this, but just a reminder, and for anyone who's new around here, the Great Tribulation is not in our future. It's 70 AD. It's against Jerusalem, and Daniel foretold that it would come. He's not the only one, but here he uses the language here. This is the day of tribulation, which will be such as has not occurred since they were born until that day. All right, so what's going to happen in that day is more severe than anything that happened before. And it was, if you read Josephus and so on. On that day, the whole people will be exalted, whoever is found inscribed in the book or in the scroll. And again, we've looked at this. All this imagery appears in Revelation. This term will be exalted. Some of the manuscripts in the Greek and the Hebrew will be saved or delivered. In these manuscripts from which this Septuagint translation comes, it is they will be exalted or raised. I think they're both true, but I think, at least here in this text, the emphasis is on resurrection. Those who are written in the scroll will be raised. And then he gives more information on that. And many of those who will sleep in the flat of the earth will arise, some to everlasting life, but others to shame and to dispersion and everlasting contempt. So you see, in the days of the tribulation, there's going to be resurrection of many. Not all, many. There was a resurrection in the first century. And in this text, it is the resurrection of the Jews. And some to life, and some to shame or contempt, right? Blessing and cursing, if you will, or everlasting life and condemnation, that kind of thing. Okay, I've got to resist the urge to go back over all this. We covered all this, but that's what the setting here is: Great Tribulation, resurrection, judgment. Those who are intelligent, that's an interesting translation. Those who are, some translations say wise, those who understand will light up like the luminaries of heaven. And those who strengthen my words will be as the stars of heaven forever and ever. Okay, so there's going to be this resurrection and judgment, and those who understand, or maybe I could phrase it something like, if they have eyes to see or ears to hear or a heart to understand, see the point? Those who understand will light up like the luminaries or stars of heaven, or luminaries of heaven, and those who strengthen my words will be as the stars of heaven forever and ever. So these are the ones who rise, and because they have understood accurately, they will rise to that blessing, everlasting life. You, Daniel, hide the ordinances and seal the scroll until the suntelos. That's the same word Jesus used, until that suntelos, till the time of consummation. Until the many rage violently and the earth is filled with injustice. And again, we looked at this in the past. The other Greek Septuagint manuscripts differ considerably from this, as do the Hebrew manuscripts. We won't get into it now. They both fit, in my opinion, but it's interesting that this group of manuscripts talks about raging and violence. I think this is the infighting of the Jews during the siege of Jerusalem in the 66 to 70 AD period. But anyway, we've covered that. We'll move on. What version were you using? I'm using the NETS Septuagint. it's translated from the Ralphs, if you know the Greek. At least one version of the Ralphs, I should say. There's a few. Okay. So the point I'm trying to draw here is Daniel is given this information. Okay. He is told that there's coming great tribulation, as the great angel Michael is involved in this. There will be resurrection. There will be judgment. Those who are understanding will shine like lights in the heavens and stars in the heaven. Daniel is told to seal the book. And of course, we looked at this in Revelation. This then is the unsealing of the scroll in Revelation that we see, the 7 seals. That's Daniel's told to seal it. John is told to unseal it, or I guess the Lamb does, but you know what I mean. I, Daniel, saw, and lo, 2 others stood, one on this side of the stream, one on the other, and they said to the one wearing linen, O sir, when then will you do the Centellus? When will all of this reach its goal of the wonders and the purification of these things which you have told? And I heard the one wearing linen who was above the water of the stream until the Centellus of consummation, the Centellus of the time. And he raised the right hand and left hand toward heaven and swore by God who lives forever, the consummation of power for the release of the holy people. Will be a time, times, and time, half a time. And all these will be accomplished. Sorry, I'm just looking at something else over here real quick. All of this about the Centellus, getting to the intended goal, time times half a time, I believe that's 3.5 years, which is about the length of time of the Roman siege of Jerusalem. All right, and I don't need to read the rest of that anymore. So that's all the background for this, I think. And so let's go back then through the parable as Jesus reveals it and tie it together. So Jesus is the Son of Man, and he is sowing good seed in the world. He is calling Jews to himself and revealing the kingdom to them. And some of them are hearing because they have ears to hear and they understand. The devil is also sowing seed. He is deceiving some of those who are hearing the word of the kingdom. This would be the Pharisees and all the Jews who are following the Pharisees. The harvest is the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD time frame. And the reapers are the messengers. You know, how many times in Revelation did we see the angels being used as the force, the spiritual force, the unseen force of those moving the hands of humans? So the angels then are leading the charge against Jerusalem. As then the darnel is gathered up and is burned with fire, so it will be at the Centellus, at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send forth his messengers, his angels, and they will gather up out of his kingdom all the stumbling blocks and those who do lawlessness. So I think this is all pointing to the great slaughter of the Jews culminating in 70 AD. Right? The Jews were the major persecutors of Christians early on and continued in the upcoming decades. I mean, the Apostle Paul, before he was the Apostle Paul, was the chief. And then after he had Stephen stoned, then mass persecution arose. And then when Paul was converted, the Jews turned on him and tried to kill him multiple times, and underhandedly and deceptively and so on. These are the stumbling blocks and those who are doing lawlessness, and they're going to be wiped out. Not entirely, but they're no longer an issue after 70 AD. And then there's a resurrection. He will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be weeping and gnashing of the teeth. That phrase, furnace of the fire, also comes from Daniel. Do you remember what happened in Daniel chapter 3? Nebuchadnezzar builds that huge statue and requires everyone everywhere to bow down to him. Daniel 3:2, Nebuchadnezzar, king of kings and ruling the whole inhabited world, sent to gather all the nations and tribes and languages, satraps, generals, local rulers, magistrates, administrators, authorities by region, and all those inhabiting the world to come to the dedication of the golden image which Nebuchadnezzar had established. And the aforementioned stood in the front of the image. And the herald heralded to the crowds, I tell you, O nations, peoples, languages. Remember, we looked at this? He's the king of all the kings. He's the king of the world. All nations bow to him. That's what the king's phrasing means, just like it does to Jesus. And he says, whenever you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, all these instruments, you shall fall down and do obeisance to the gold image which King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And anyone who does not fall down and do obeisance, they will throw him into the furnace of fire. So that language is terminology that the Pharisees and the Jews would have been familiar with. If you don't bow the knee to the king, you'll be thrown into the fire. And remember how hot that fire was that Nebuchadnezzar established? That even those surrounding it that were responsible to look in and see what was going on down there, some of them died because it was so hot you couldn't even get a little bit close to it. That's the imagery used here for the sons of the devil who are disobedient to the king, Jesus. And weeping and gnashing of teeth is a regular term to describe just they're weeping and wailing, not like sorrowful, but just so angry. They're gnashing teeth, that kind of thing. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. And I think that's also the kingdom of the heavens in the heavens. I think this is after resurrection. So just like we saw in Revelation and Acts 24 mentions this, John 5, Jesus talks about those in the tombs will rise and some to everlasting life, and some that's first century resurrection. The righteous, those who understand, going back to Daniel, those who understand will be raised to everlasting life. They will shine as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. So that's what I think is going on here. So I don't think the wheat and the tares applies after the first century. This is about Jews. There are wheat and there are tares that will be exposed for what they are in the first century. So that's how I see it. St. Doug is the man. That's funny. I don't know what that means. New Testament version. I'm using the literal standard version. Darren says those with understanding use Brenton's. Yeah, prove it. Matt says all the persecutions and acts leading up to 70 AD are by the Jews scattered around the Roman Empire. Paul is only in prison because of the Jews, and he ends up safer there. Yeah, indeed. 7 times. Sorry, Jib, I don't know when that came in. Not sure what that's saying. He lived there 2 whole years. His own. Yeah. These are always interesting views, given that Jesus doesn't directly. Darren says, would verse 43 apply to us today? Yes, I think so, but not because of Matthew 13. Because of some statements in Revelation and 1 Thessalonians and 1 Corinthians, I believe that since the first century, believers who die will rise and immediately reign in the kingdom. But I don't think that's the topic here. I think this is the Jews, because he's alluding to Daniel 12. That's how I see it. Jim says, great lesson, Doug. The dots are slowly coming together. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. We just got to keep going over it again and again and again, right? These are always interesting comparisons, given that Christ himself does not directly quote anything from Daniel in relation to Matthew 13. Yeah, the allusions are pretty strong, in my opinion. Matt says, any insights to share with us regarding different Septuagint versions in the future? Others have asked that as well. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe. Darren, the big immerser guy, is the resident expert, and I've talked to him a little bit about doing something together to talk about this. We'll see. Maybe. I don't know, Darren. Do you have extensive literature on this? Somewhere is it in the Discord? Maybe Matt connect with Darren, and I know he's studied quite a bit of this. The fire in Daniel's head. Oh, I see. Very good. All right. Well, let's leave it there for the day, and we'll continue on tomorrow. Have a great day. Grace and peace to you.